My lovely wife Daria and I moved from the town into our dream countryside house in November 2024. An old, beautiful cottage sitting on about 2/3 of an acre surrounded by the stunning countryside of the North Wessex Downs. It's perfect for us and a huge upgrade from our previous house in almost every single way. Growing up, my dad and granddad always had a workshop, a place that was part organised mess, part centre of creativity. It was where things got fixed, built, or reinvented entirely to the background hum of a staticky radio. I spent countless hours in those spaces, passing tools, tinkering, and learning the quiet satisfaction that comes from making something with your hands. To some, a workshop is just a damp shed or cold garage where you store stuff that doesn't belong in the house. For me, it's a core part of a home, and the new house doesn't really have one. My original plan was to use the wooden garage here at the end of the driveway. It seemed perfect to start with, not much smaller than my original single car garage that I was moving my workshop from, close to the house, ready to go. However, while unloading the tools from the removal van into the garage in the middle of November, I noticed that the floor was wet with rising damp, the roof was leaking, and the power didn't even work. In the first few weeks, winter seeped into everything. All my tools started to rust and mold grew on everything placed anywhere near a wall, which, by the way, are made of asbestos sheets. So yeah, the garage is definitely a no-go. I got big plans for that space in the future, but for now, I needed a different plan. On the opposite side of the garden, there were two dilapidated sheds in need of some serious repair. The space they sat on, though, pretty large, flat, close to the back of the house, just right for a workshop. After deconstructing and moving the sheds into new positions in the garden, I could measure up and get into the design phase. The size I'm choosing for the workshop is about the same as the old one, 6.5 meters long and 3.2 meters wide. Behind the proposed slab location is a bank of earth and a stream. To get a bit more depth to the workshop, I want to position it into this bank a little. To cater for that earth, which is going to be pushed up against the building, I will add a 450mm concrete retaining wall, which I may as well carry around the whole building perimeter. This will keep the earth away from the timber framing, and I'll face it in some brick slips on the front and sides to act as a nice feature to make it look a little bit more like the house. The 2x4 framing is pretty standard and includes two cutouts for large windows and one for a door. I'll then sheath the framing in OSB and clad it with a horizontal timber feather edge cladding. As for the roof, no simple flat roof here. I will be constructing a 30-degree clay tiled pitch roof. For that, I'll build the rafters from 2x6s with a 2x10 ridge board. As my ridge board isn't supported over the 6.5 meter span, I'll need to use both collar ties and rafter ties to give the roof its strength. Rafter ties need to be placed in the bottom third of the roof and keep the weight of the roof from causing the walls to spread outwards. And collar ties need to be placed within the top third of the roof and stop the rafters separating under unbalanced loads, such as high winds. The total height of the building will be 3.6 meters, keeping it well below the 4 meter limit for permitted development for pitched roofs more than 2 meters from a boundary. With a rough plan in the bag, it was time to start the groundworks. It wasn't until after I'd done the initial dig that I decided to film the process. So we pick up in September 2025, after a glorious summer during which I cleared the space and then dug about 350mm down for my concrete pad foundations. I set out the concrete forms around 250mm above the dugout level to leave plenty of depth for the subbase. Shortly after we moved in, the brick wall between us and our neighbours was damaged and fell over. This 100mm layer of crushed brick hardcore is all that remains of that wall. I spent many evenings clearing up the bricks that could be saved and smashing those that couldn't with a hammer. On the plus side, I've now got a couple of pallets of bricks that I can use to clad around the bottom of the workshop. After spreading the hardcore out as the first layer of the subbase, I compacted it down with a few passes of this small electrical whacker. The plan is to do this after each layer to ensure there isn't any settling once the concrete pad is poured. After the 100mm of hardcore, I added 150mm of type 1. I added it in 2 layers, compacting after each. The last layers prior to the concrete were a blinding of builder's sand, damp-proof membrane, or DPM, and some rebar mesh. The DPM will stop moisture leaching up through the concrete floor, and the sand is just there to stop any sharp stones piercing the DPM. The rebar mesh will add a bunch of strength to the pad, possibly overkill, but the extra expense is minimal. My phone ran out of battery halfway through this time lapse, so you don't actually see the DPM and mesh going in, but you will see it in the next shots. Then it was on to concrete day. I coerced a group of my friends into waking up at 7 AM on a Saturday to come give me a hand, only to have the concrete truck break down on arrival and have to head back to the yard for repairs. Not to return until a more reasonable time of around 11 AM, by which time everyone was wondering why they bothered getting up so early in the first place. But once it was back up and running, everyone swung into action and we wheelbarrowed the concrete into the form. This was my first time doing anything like this, and a couple of mistakes were made. We didn't tamp well enough and ended up overfilling the concrete and using more than we needed, but you know, it's all part of the learning process. After the pad was as smooth as we could get it, I pushed some vertical rebar into the wet concrete to support the rear wall that will hold the bank back. After a pretty action-packed morning, all there was to do was wait a few days for the concrete to dry. And that's it for this video. In the next one, we'll attempt to tackle the drainage, concrete walls, and begin the framing.